And that's one reason Steiner says it can be valuable to read this book, is because it can plant the seed that can then grow by your own thinking. So
that has, if we think about the time in history and the place where Steiner lived, that concept of seeds versus imposing a whole thought on someone is really big implications. Because it was a time of, imposing
right.
on masses of people.
All knowledge of the worlds of soul and spirit slumbers in the profoundest depth of the human being, which is really just a different way of reiterating what he's just said, is that basically, in some way, the seeds for a full comprehension of the cosmos have streamed into us by virtue of us we are a microcosm, and what has streamed into us from the cosmos now lives in seed form, and it's possible for each of us in our own work, to our own human wisdom, to reveal to ourselves again, and then to reveal again in a unique and individual way to the rest of the world. No one can in truth become a seer who has not worked themselves into the light of thought. And so Steiner does create this dichotomy, and it's a dichotomy that we always find in people, spiritual seekers. This ideal that the feeling path versus the thinking path. And since we usually think of thinking as this process of thoughting, our initial intuition is to say, well, you can't really, intuition is not a thought process, it's not a way of thought, it's a way of feeling, it's a way of working with a feeling. And Steiner doesn't really contradict that, but again, the way I have best learned out of myself to put this is that feeling is not the end of the path of wisdom, it's the beginning of the path of wisdom. And for many, they think a feeling is it. Oh, when I have this feeling response, that's the wisdom. And then inspiration should arise out of that. But Steiner says to truly know the spiritual world and what's going on in the invisible, that's the beginning. You have to then use that as the content. I think he actually says that. Use those feelings as the content of your investigation, not the fruit of your investigation. In a certain sense, they are the seeds that still need to flower into a true perception of the cosmos. They are simply the individual. You have simply become awake to the way that the cosmos is raying into you, or affecting you when you come to those feeling perceptions. You simply have become awake to that. Oh wow, I just felt that. You become awake to it, but you haven't penetrated it yet. You haven't cultivated it, and then the work begins toward doing that. And that is a process of, as we said before, a threefold process. First, doing the fire work of seeing how that feeling perception is colored by your own constitution and your own previous experiences, so that you can see it more clearly and experience it more clearly. And then the next process is, once you do get a more clear perception, you, in a sense, have to trust what you see there. You have to, and if you do the firework first, your capacity for trust develops. I'll give you a concrete example of this. A lot of times I'm sitting in meetings like this, and today, in our consciousness soul period, we are very aware of each other. We have this capacity, this feeling perception of what's going on. If you kind of really, if you can admit it to yourself, when you sit in with groups, you kind of know what this person's feeling, and you watch the conversation and you get a sense, this whole metaphysical, psychological time we're in, that we have all of this kind of feeling about what's going on in group dynamics. We can't speak it though, and we seldom speak it because we're so, our own prejudices are what we know are going to be in the speaking. Until we've done the fire work, we can't speak our knowledge without either ourselves saying, well, I know my prejudice is going to unfold in that, or someone else recognizing our prejudices. No, you can't speak that, because I know this is your interest, this is why you're speaking that. So until you do the fire work, we can't even speak the knowledge in an effective way that we already, in a sense, are aware of on the feeling perceptive level. So you do the fire work, and then you begin to speak. And then the last thing is the air trial, because then once you speak it, you can only defend it out of your own authority. You can't say, well, but she said it, or Mr. Joppa said it, or I read it in this book. If you fall back on an authority other than yourself, then that weakens and itself muddies the clarity of what you are offering, of what you're seeing in the invisible world. So you must be through the fire, the water, and the air trial. And that's, of course, another book. That's Higher Worlds and Entertainment, which in some sense, I don't like to do it before this book, because this book is kind of challenging. But obviously, to truly get into Theosophy and understand how to really work with it, Higher Worlds Entertainment is a really important book because it's describing this process of getting out of your way. So you must really make an effort. No one in truth can become a seer who has not worked themselves into the light of thought. Feeling perception must be the beginning, not the end. To acquire vision of the soul and spirit world, one must without reservation and without prejudice lay oneself open to what is revealed in human life and the external world. And that, in a sense, is more of just a summary of what I've been saying. The little exercise we did earlier, in a sense, that requires a little bit of going through those four approaches to patting the belly and rubbing the head, or patting the head and rubbing the belly. In a sense, you have to open yourself up to the polarity, the imbalances you experience, and recognize them. Oh, yeah, this is an imbalance. I can see this imbalance here. I can't do this. I can't do that. And then, you have to then work that. And you have to find in each one of those exercises, an inner picture for yourself of you in that activity. And this is kind of a hard part, because what happens is that, and you just work with this and you'll see it's hard, for you to really have right now, to go back and clearly remember what your experience was in each of the four activities. Mm-hmm. And you have to be able to hold that in your consciousness to really be able to then go back and see the pattern. And to a certain degree, we really are asleep all the time in our bodies. So that process of trying to create a gestalt by perceiving that activity as emerging from the heart is where the memory will be strengthened for you. And that will become something that you can reclaim as a remembered experience and differentiate each of the four exercises and begin to be able to compare and contrast, and then to be able to see a pattern through all of those. That takes work. That's the thought work. That you need to first strengthen your capacity to recall the feeling perception, And then you have those laid out before you. And then you have to do the next part, which is kind of like, this is a little bit of a difficult part. The rule that I gave you about not tracing over a line. Steiner talks about this. I think he may talk about this more in the next part, though. How, well, we talked about it. You need to order your thinking. You need to find the lawfulness that in your thinking that is connected to the same lawfulness that is out there in the spiritual world. That manifests in most spiritual traditions in different ways. In Theosophy, it manifests as what are called the 6 protective exercises. And you do those 6 protective exercises that Steiner has given as the beginning point of ordering the thinking. Also, in yoga, there's a set of principles called niti, which they use it when you study traditional Ashtanga yoga. The first thing you get no, you don't. I think you get niti first. Niti is a set of principles in Ashtanga yoga that you get. They're called the jamas and the niyamas. And usually your teacher gives you those set of principles, and they say, go practice these. And there are things like santosha, contentment of mind, satya, understanding truth. And you go practice these. And these are the way you order your mind before you can actually begin the process of Ashtanga yoga. And so so when they talk about this way of ordering the mind, there are practices that are usually being given. Even the 10 Commandments, in a sense, is a way of ordering the mind. It's very much culturally influenced, but it's in a certain time it says you need to practice these. These are the foundation. They're usually said these are the foundation for doing the practice, whether it's a cultural practice or a very individualized yoga or mystical practice. But they're usually a teacher will often say, well, what I have discovered is that to be successful on this path, you must first understand these things. And then they give you those things, which if you practice these, and you will begin to order your mind in such a way that then you will be open enough to now activate those energies. And of course, the next thing in Ashtanga yoga is to give you Hatha yoga, which is what most of us know as yoga.
Physical.
But the whole point of that physical yoga is to unbind the energy in your body. So it's available now to do the practice. That's the traditional reason they give it to you. We have these ways in which our growing has bound up the energy in the body, and you do Hatha yoga, you unbind that energy, and now that energy is available for practice. But Jama Niyama Niti is given first, the ordering of the mind.